We are at 5:20, so if there's no opposition, I think let's go ahead and start with informal reports from the district, if we may.
From the district.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. My head's still spinning from the district. So,
Well, I give it for you, Tom. The clear glass goes in the clear holder, and the colored glass goes in the colored holders. How's that?
That worked. I will say that right now, I mean, not that things aren't happening, but with regard to waste tires and apartment recycling, the things related to the waste management plan are slowing down a little bit because we're having to focus more on year-end stuff and getting ready to wrap up our year. And we have, there's financial reporting that's due, reports regarding volumes of materials and stuff that are due to item, and so that's we're trying to have to start to focus on those things. So can't put as much energy into that stuff, but are still trying to move things forward as best we can. But once we get into the new year, be able to devote more energy to those and hopefully really start to see progress on moving some things forward. One thing that we have started doing, are you guys familiar with the organization MC Iris? Okay, so they reached out to us a month or so ago, and I guess every year or two they try to focus on an invasive species and make a push to eradicate it. And so for next year, the calorie pear is the victim, and they asked if a district would be interested in being a public entity that might try to set the example for that. I've agreed to look at doing that. I can't commit to anything without knowing how bad our situation is and what kind of a cost and effort it'll take to do it. But they are going to come and do an inventory of all of our 5 facilities, and then give us a report of. And I said if we're going to do this, let's just look at everything, not just the calorie pear. Let's look at all of it. We can focus on the calorie pear, but there's other things out there that need attention. We may as well look at those and see what we can do. So they've toured and done the inventory at South Walnut, and then started at the landfill today. We're not sure. Surprisingly, the landfill was much better than any of us thought it would be with regard to invasives and non-native species, but we'll wait for them to complete their report and give it to us. And still need to get some approval from the 4 rural centers are all leased properties. We don't own those. So MC Iris wanted formal approval from the property owner to enter the property and do the inventory. So they're still working to get that, and then we'll get the other 4 facilities done and get those reports from them and see what's out there, see what their recommendations are for control and or ratification efforts, and what kind of cost and effort that will be to the district, and what we can do to try to move forward with getting rid of that stuff at the facilities that we have control over. So that might turn into a neat project. It might turn into more than we bit off more than we could chew. I don't know. We'll find out. But I'm interested to see what those reports come back with, and what we can do. So,
I'm curious because I know MC Iris does provides a lot of volunteer opportunities for people who want to come help pull out invasives or trim invasives and things like that. So I wonder if, depending on what the report shows, if there would be opportunities for people to volunteer to do stuff at any of the sites to help with that.
I can't imagine that we would turn down an offer of help.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and that's, cost is one thing, but I've also said effort, and that's, the other part of it is the labor involved in doing it, and what, we have our labor force, but it's still limited. And we can't ignore our green business network because we need those guys out pulling weeds. That doesn't work that way. So, so yeah, if there's people that are willing to come out and help with that, I don't see a problem at all. So, the landfill might be the only place, and it would be more from a safety concern than anything else. But like I said, have to see where they identify things and how much and what and make a decision. And other than that, we're working with our vendor that does our compactors and our legal department, looking at potentially upgrading the compactors at our facilities. Some questions about whether or not that's something that would have to go out publicly for bid, because it is a lease agreement. And when you look at leasing 13 or 14 compactors, the annual value of that does exceed some of the thresholds in the statute regarding going out for public bids or proposals. But we also don't have a single lease agreement. So there's some legal interpretation needed for, are we talking about the value in total or the value of a single agreement? And that's what we're trying to figure out. But the units that they've proposed upgrading to have block heaters on them, which will help out a lot in the winter. I mean, I don't know if you guys are aware, all of our facilities basically have a propane tank and a torch. And in the winter, when those guys get there, they've got to heat those things up to get that hydraulic fluid moving again, so they'll run. That would eliminate that. They'll also have a little higher compaction pressure on them. Should be able to get more in boxes, and also have some indicators on them as to how full the box is, which should help us be more efficient in our hauling. And maybe save some money on the hauling side by reducing some of the hauls that we're currently doing. So there's certainly some benefits to doing that. The other issue that's gone on is our orange bag vendor came in with a quote for next year that was substantially higher than any of us anticipated. High enough that we probably can't absorb it into the budget. So we have an adequate supply of bags at this time to get us. The guys are telling me to probably get us at least into March or April. So we're considering going out for a bid on the orange bags to see if we can't find a better price on those. And other than that, that's all. It's just all regular mundane stuff.
That sounded like quite a list of non-mundane things in addition to those things. And real quick, before I go for questions, if I may, Mr. White, Paul White, if you are able to use the mute option on your mic so that there's less background noise, if that would be possible.
Sure.
Thank
If I
you.
can figure it out.
Sure. Perfect, thanks. So are there any questions on that report or that description, informal summary?
When you say the orange bag quote, do you mean the quote for you purchasing the bags that they would cost more? Okay.
You now have a quorum coming in.
Nice, thank you. That's good news. Once we get confirmation of Ryan's connection, there it is. Welcome, Mr. Conway. In that case, I think we will actually convene this meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District. which is on this third Thursday of November, the 18th, 2021. So will the vice chair please call roll?
Sure. John Arnold. Brian Conway. I see you. I can't hear you, but I can see you.
This work?
Oh, I can hear you a little bit now. Yeah.
Oh, now a little bit? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Rondi Cox, present. Lily Kleinlein,
Present.
Lauren Cott. Andrew Manley,
Present.
Nelson Schaefer. Paul White,
Present.
Morning Wilder. Joe Inia.
Here.
Okay, we have 6, which is quorum.
Very nice, thank you. Well, in that case, let me do a quick screen share of the agenda so that we can get approval. So this agenda was distributed by email on Monday, the 15th. Are there any objections to adopting it as it was distributed and as it's shown in the current screen share? All right, seeing none, the agenda is adopted. And on it, the first order of business is approving the meeting minutes. First from the July 15th regular meeting, which was redistributed by email and uploaded to Dropbox on Thursday, August 19th. Are there any corrections to those minutes? All right, if there are no corrections, those minutes are approved as distributed. And then we will proceed to the August 19th regular meeting minutes, which were distributed by email and uploaded to Dropbox on Tuesday, September 14th. Are there any corrections to those minutes? All right, I don't see any, but I would like to note that on page 1, item 3 of those minutes reference approval of the district budget, and there's a date that's July __ 2021. So I think if that was referring to the district's board meeting of that month, that date would be the 8th. But I just wanted to draw that to attention for update. I'm sure it was with the intention to fill it in.
And I'm not looking at the minutes right now, but if we're talking about approval, the budget was presented to the board for the first time at the July meeting. Our board actually voted on it at their August meeting. And then it went to the county council for actual adoption.
Okay, that makes sense. Apologies on that confusion. I'll be sure to update that with the proper months and dates and all whatnot for the August meeting.
Now, the flip side of it is that, and I run into this with some of our board members sometimes, is that, you know, the meetings, the minutes are to reflect what was said at the meeting, not what was meant to be said. So, I've been asked, and we have in the past, kind of, you know, either in parentheses or, you know, made footnotes in minutes to indicate that something was stated in error and what the correct statement should have been. So,
well, I'll go back to the CAT's recording and confirm what was actually said and add footnotes if needed.
All right, then if there are no further corrections, those minutes will be adopted with the addition of the date for that particular line. And that concludes the approval of meeting minutes. we did an informal presentation of the district report prior to convening. I think in this case, would it be proper to provide a summary of the report? Tom, do you have a?
I would
insight?
actually, I would leave that to Mr. Conway as the only one who was not present for that. And if he requests that I provide the update again or a summary, I will. Or if he wants to review the meeting on CATS to do it that way, because it'll still be on the recording on CATS, and that would be up to him.
You're good, brother. I know you're doing work.
Don't tell
Perfect.
anybody.
It was a good update. You wanna rewatch that. Okay, so that concludes the district report. I will proceed to the chair report, which is simply that the district is doing a green chat series that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and that the next session is Saturday, November 20th at noon, which is this coming Saturday, and it is on home energy savings. I will put the Facebook link into the chat, and I think I will actually stop my screen share for now so that we can see one another and the chat. And if you are interested in attending, you can contact Elisa at email. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry if I could interject, because
Yeah.
I thank you for doing that, because I forgot that in mine. And this will be the second session of it. We attendance wasn't what we hoped for the first one, but it's something new, and people need to be aware that we're doing it. But I think Elisa's really identified some some good people to hit the topics that we're going to be presenting in this. And these are, some of them are going to be from the business side, some are going to be local residents. But I really think this has an opportunity to be something that a lot of people would find interesting and beneficial.
Thank you for that additional description. And the access to the meeting is not actually provided in the Facebook post, but it is through emailing Elisa, and I posted the email address and phone number. It is epokral@mcswmd.org.
Yep.
Or 812-349-2866.
Yeah, and then once she gets people registered and stuff, the meeting hasn't been set up in Zoom yet, so once she does all that, she'll just do a blanket email to everybody that's registered to attend.
Perfect, thank you. That is the only item I had for the chair report. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, that completes the reports, and we will proceed to the new business of this meeting, which the first item of which is 2022 CAC appointments. So per the district's, I think it's resolution 90-1 that defines the end of CAC membership terms in the end of the calendar year. So if there's anyone who is not interested in continuing CAC membership, that can be brought forward now in planning to inform the board for their appointments, which will be made either in December or January. So the next month or the following.
I hope December. That makes it a lot easier than telling everybody a week in advance.
So I'll open the floor if there's anyone who wants to weigh in on that. And, Mr. Arnold will have the opportunity to. Are you with us, John? John, can you hear us all right?
I can hear you fine. Thanks
Perfect.
for asking.
Yes, good. I just wanted to quick get you up to date. We were just talking about 2022 CAC appointments and that the district is looking to know if there are any CAC members who are not interested in continuing their membership since terms expire at the end of this calendar year, and they will be reappointing during the December meeting. So now is an opportunity, if you are not interested in pursuing membership, to.
Yeah, I'll do it again.
All right. So everybody's still on board. Thank you all. Glad to have you.
And I will reach out to Morning, Lauren and Nelson, who aren't
Okay.
here, to confirm with them.
Okay, that works. Alternatively, I was going to offer to, but that works. All right, that concludes the first new business item. The next, and probably the most involved, is the CAC bylaws. And it's essentially in a state of open discussion. I distributed well, I should start by saying that there is in Dropbox a set of 3 files in the bylaws folder. The first of which is the original CAC bylaws draft 1 that is of an unconfirmed status. And then I've created 2 new files titled CAC bylaws draft 2 2021. One is a working doc.paper file, and the other one is a formatted docx file. So the formatted file has exactly the same contents as the paper file in just a word processing format instead of a collaborative document. So I will put a link to the paper file into the chat because in it there are comments about a handful of items that I think would be important to discuss, provided that members, maybe I should actually start by asking how members would like to proceed in terms of defining the bylaws, given that we now have 2 drafts. And the second draft that I made incorporates, I'll add that it incorporates all of the statutory definitions around the CAC from the state code and then the Monroe County code, as well as the district's resolutions. So there are reference specified to each one of those, and then there are a number of new items in the draft that I created for review that were not accounted for in the original draft. So my proposal will be to have the second draft supersede the first, and that if the CAC agrees, we can begin discussion with, at the very least, the points that I think are open to discuss, or we can simply open the floor to wherever anyone would like to begin with that discussion.
In the required type of members section, should we include a statement that says that members, there should be like a balance of members from within the city and in the county? I know that the EC for Monroe County has like a requirement of they can only live in the county, not in the city. Or no, I think you can live in the city, but should we put that kind of requirements in there, both city and county representation?
I know there aren't any such requirements in any of the statutes, and I would be personally reluctant to add more restrictions on membership. Obviously, it would be better to have broader representation, but I don't know that as a body, it would be beneficial to prohibit memberships. Is that, or maybe I should ask more specifically, is that, how would you propose the incorporation of that balance?
Well, I mean, 3A1, when you're citing the Indiana code, or wait, wrong, I scrolled down. There it is. Indiana Code 1321-3-11, A1, representatives of the solid waste management industry operating in the district. That'd be Lauren Cott and Ryan Conway. But I'd like maybe an additional thing, not citing the Indiana code, but saying at least one representative that lives in county boundaries, or maybe I'm overthinking it.
So you're thinking of representatives specifically of the solid waste management industry?
Well, no, that's one of the requirements for being a member, but just getting like, say at least one member should be living outside city limits or something.
I mean, I guess if I could chime in just with my thoughts. And I do kind of concur with Joe. I mean, you know, we currently have 5 vacant positions, you know, open. And so, you know, adding additional caveats, restrictions, and then, you know, and then in the state code, you know, the state code just says that they have to be a resident of the district. You know, and now that I don't think there's anything that would prohibit you from, you know, within the district doing something like what you're proposing. But like I said, I kind of concur with Joe. That's just, you know, we're already not at full capacity and it's just one more obstacle.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I agree in that case.
And, you know, and bylaws can always be amended. And if we ever get to the point that we have a full body and there's additional interest and we want to look at where do people live and the makeup of the committee and do something like, you can always amend the bylaws down the road.
Okay.
We also could, if we find ourselves in a position where we know that everybody on the committee is within the city limits, then we could try to get the word out that we're looking for someone beyond the city limits who would like to join. Just kind of more encouraging people beyond the city limits to join.
Yeah, I
Just
suppose
remember,
that's a good.
the city limits are going to
say
change.
that too.
The city limits are going to change soon.
Yeah.
Oh
True.
goodness.
Yeah, we could definitely think about, you know, outreach in general of getting more members. I don't know how off the top of my head on this topic, but like as a separate agenda item in future months, and maybe just how we can make sure that we're doing a good job at looking all around the county and having as widespread of a membership, but maybe that wouldn't necessarily be tied to the bylaws.
Do we know, because I apologize, I honestly don't know. I don't know where you all live. Do we know what the current breakdown is, city and county?
I am city.
I'm city.
City.
I'm sitting now.
So you know, I mean, but I asked that because, you know, when we present the reappointments to the board at that public board meeting, you know, that's always a good opportunity, you know, to say, hey, we have open slots. We're looking for interested parties. And, you know, if we want to say that we're kind of city heavy on our representation right now, and we, you know, really would like to see some people from outside of the city inquire about the CAC, I can do that.
Paul, I didn't hear your answer. Are you city limits or outside of the city limits?
I am outside the city limits and I intend to stay that way, even if I have to put up a fence around everything that says Hamilton, you do not belong here.
All right, so we've got at least one.
Ryan, you're outside of the city, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Moore County.
It better be.
I see your point, however, Andrew, that perhaps, yeah, to incorporate an interest in diversification of city and county membership, and that I don't know quite how it would be best to go about it, though, that if there were, as Tom described, a case where there was a greater number of applicants than slots, how favor would be distributed.
Put up some signs at the rural drop-off locations.
So yeah, you know, for my 2 cents, for what it's worth, that with 10 members and 15 openings, maybe a little premature, but you know, if we get to 12 or 13 members, then maybe we want to look at how the representation breaks down, and before we did those 14th and 15th slots, you know, maybe you would want to consider putting a caveat like that in there.
I will add though, appointment is by the board exclusively, so that would be essentially the board's prerogative, wouldn't it?
It would be, but I think, you know, and I think, you know, and I don't, Joe, I don't, I mean, I know you and I have talked a little bit about this. I mean, you know, and we've talked about, you know, having the board review the bylaws, you know, before they're adopted. And, you know, so the board would always have the option to delete that out or request that that be put in if that's what their preference is. And it's certainly, you know, if it's not in this version that goes to the board now, Joe or Rondi or whoever does that presentation, you know, at the board meeting, say, here are the bylaws, you could certainly mention, you know, this was a discussion we had, and we you know, we wanted to do it at this time for this reason, or we didn't think it was time to do it for this reason, and, you know, but put it out there to the board, and, you know, if they want to, you know, give an opinion of it one way or another, they'll do it. And then you can take that under consideration.
Okay, I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, I just suppose for now, just being cognizant for the future, if and when we do have 15 or nearing 15 members. And yeah, we don't need to put it in the bylaws yet.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any other particular remarks anyone has or points that anyone would like to take up? Seeing none, I will just go to the comments that were added. Let's see. Particularly, recommendations for membership. So this would be under item number 3, membership, section 2, appointments. There is a note that says recommendations for membership shall be directed to the board for its consideration. Is it worth defining a particular method for making those recommendations? Either to the board of this, or I'm sorry, either to the chair of the CAC or to the board, and via any particular format like email, or is that something that is worth defining in bylaws, or is it sufficient to just say make recommendations to the board and everyone can do it sort of at their own discretion via their own method?
I would say that, and whether or not this is actually written somewhere, I would have to go and do a little research. But the current process is, you know, that people reach out to the district office and generally will get in touch with me and provide a letter of interest that can be it can be an email, it could be a formal letter that's mailed, something that's faxed in. And then that's gets vetted by the executive committee, and barring objections from them, that letter would be put in the board packet with a request to appoint that person to the CAC.
And so that would be outside of the regulation of bylaws entirely then, right? Just a district managed process?
It is, but as like I said, I would, you know, I don't know if I'd have to go look to see if it's, you know, written down anywhere as a you know, a rule, a policy, or if that's just over time how things have evolved. I honestly don't know if that's in writing somewhere. I guess maybe since the appointment is made by the board, maybe the CAC bylaws are not the right place to describe that process.
Seems reasonable.
Does the board know we're working on this?
At least the executive committee does, because I know Joe discussed it at executive committee meetings.
I believe I mentioned during the board reports as well that we've been discussing bylaw content.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So in a very general way, yes. Okay, I think I will extract that from the bylaws then about making recommendations for membership. Unless there's any opposition. All right. Another item that I thought was important was just to get general feedback on the expectations of membership. So this would be section 3, membership, item number 4, expectations. These are items that I thought were reasonable, I guess is the best way to say it. So I don't want them to be entirely my standards of reasonability, and just want to confirm that they conform to what existing members find to be reasonable expectations of membership. And also, prior to it being adopted, to make sure, just kind of confirm that everyone has had the opportunity to review them and agrees with them, since we will all be essentially bound to these expectations going forward.
I just had a question about the membership. I don't know if there's a difference or differential between just community members or representatives from various entities. So, you know, are there requirements that we have someone from each of the different industries? And if so, are they under a different sort of attendance obligation in general?
Well, I mean, the way that the statute reads, you know, it just kind of generically says that the CAC is to be made up of representatives of the waste industry companies operating in the district, you know, and interested and concerned citizens. You know, it doesn't say that you have to have a specific number of either. The only thing that it says is that you can't have more than 50% of the committee be representatives of the waste industry. So, you know, and it's, you know, we don't, I mean, we don't force people to be part of the committee. And if we, you know, we can only work with the people that express interest and want to be a part of the committee. And if nobody from the waste industry inquires, or, you know, there's not really much we can do about that. Thankfully, we have a concerned citizenry here, because if we had nobody that lived in the county that wanted to be a part of it, and only Lauren was on our CAC, we couldn't have a CAC because that's more than 50%. So I don't know that 50% will ever be an issue for us, but you know, I don't know of anything in the statute or any of the county code, you know, that says there has to be X number of representatives that are residents or X number that are waste industry reps.
All right. Yeah, I guess I was wondering regarding like the attendance recommendation. So if an industry rep, thank you for reminding what that was called. If industry reps are not in attendance, is there a different tier of when Joe would have to reach out and say, you know, you haven't attended after this many months, blah, 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 or whether, you know, just having that industry representation by name is important enough. I just think, you know, over the years, and we've had some really involved, but then I remember way back when we had some people who, you know, hardly ever came. And so wondering, you know, if that's holding us up on having quorum in the future. I don't know. And it's not everyone.
So we'd have to adjust the definition of quorum then, if we were going to have different attendance.
Well, the definition of quorum is kind of established in the law, and we
yeah, no, so that's what I'm saying. I mean, it would, if we could say, if we were laxer on industry representatives, then we, you know, of course that would affect quorum.
Yeah. Lily, what comes to mind when you phrase it that way, you know, is that, you know, I would, you know, I guess, you know, the initial reaction is that no, they would be subject, you know, to the same requirements as any other member. But the flip side of that would be, because we are required to have representatives of the waste industry operating here on the committee, that if, because of work conflicts or whatever, and I'm gonna pick on Lauren. I'm sorry she's not here, but or not gonna pick on Ryan because he is here and he's a waste industry rep. So, if Ryan had, some labor issues and he can't attend meetings because he's having to pick up running routes or whatever, and he misses 2, 3, 4 meetings in a row because of that, and then you guys, get the board to remove him, he could come back and make an issue of that and say, hey, the state says you have to let me on here. And now you've kicked me off. And now you have no waste management representation on the committee. I mean, that's the thought that comes to mind, and the potential catch-22 you put yourself in if you don't give them a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, that's exactly the instance I would have referred to.
It seems like the simplest solution would just be to lower the level of quorum. As I remember from last meeting when I was watching it, that is an option, right?
So a few things I've learned through all the reading of the statutes and compiling this particular bylaw is, firstly, Lily, to your remark, there is no distinction between types of membership in statutorily. Nothing regulates one from the other. We are essentially all equal members in that sense, just with different titles. Either we represent industry or not. The reality is, just as Tom described, industry reps might have more or different obligations that will make their attendance more difficult, but attendance is another important item that I want to take up more specifically immediately following this remark. But to follow up on your point, Andrew, the Monroe County Code section 216, which defines all, so I think committees, regulations for all committees, states that quorum is 50% of membership, period. So by parliamentary procedure, strictly speaking, it is possible to define quorum as whatever one pleases or whatever one so chooses, but we are superseded by that set of code that defines how we have to regulate as a county body.
And that's why we put in the non-active membership clause.
So yeah, that said, we are required to have 50% or more, greater than 50% of members attending. But I think the segue to perhaps addressing membership is the way that I described it is that, as I mentioned earlier, membership appointment is entirely up to the board. But what the CAC can do is make recommendations to the board. And in this particular case, trying to find out exactly where it is. So it's under membership. So it's section 3, or gosh, sorry. Screen just changed on me. There's a termination. So it's item number 6, termination/removal. So there is the ability to a recommendation for termination of any member may be made as a motion by any other member for any reason that a member deems appropriate, and it must be approved by a 2/3 majority. So in the case that Tom described, if there's a member who's not attending and we decide to say eliminate them, it's just our ability to do so by making a motion and having 2/3 of the body agree to it, and then having the board actually make the decision. So we don't actually remove anyone, but we would just say to the board that we as a body, 2/3 of us think that this is what should be done. So that's another thing that I particularly wanted to consult with everyone about to see if that's the best criteria for making removals, particularly in the case of attendance. Monroe County Code also says that attendance, let's see, members who miss 2 consecutive meetings without reasonable cause may be removed for poor attendance. So again, we can as a body make the decision by a majority, either, we can define that majority too. 2/3 to me seem reasonable just to avoid any even splits of opinions, but we can define as a body how we want to deal with proposing membership removal.
I guess I would caution you, just under your 6B, where, it says, for any reason that the member deems appropriate, but when you have previously already established the expectations, if I come up with some reason that's way out of left field, the person can come back and say, well, what expectation have I not met? And how is that a reason to have me removed from the committee?
I agree. I think that's true. Again, it was the 2/3 majority that prevents anyone from unilaterally doing that, was my philosophy. But I thought it would at least provide any member the opportunity to say, I believe this member is not supporting or helping the productivity of this body, and at least to be able to bring that up to the other members in a formal way.
I guess I'm just wondered if maybe the language, for any reason the member deems appropriate, should just be stricken, and just the motion can be made by any member and it has to be approved by a 2/3 majority.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm hearing some background noise. It's kind of making it hard to understand the conversation. So if anyone's not talking, like when you're not talking, would you mind muting, please?
Indeed. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, so Tom, I don't disagree. I can make that change. Are there any other thoughts before modifying that section? I'll make a note of that then. All right, and I do want to note that we are approaching about 8 minutes from our scheduled meeting end time. It would be nice, if possible, to reach a point where we could move to forward a draft to the board for review, which would at least give the board time to take a look at the draft as it's provided, and then we can make a resolution based on the board's response by our December meeting. Now, that said, there are a handful of other items that I was hoping to discuss, and I do not want to cut discussion short if there are more opinions. So we could either move to extend the duration of the meeting if everyone present has the ability to, or we could just discuss for the scheduled time and then resume this discussion at the next regular meeting. Are there any particular thoughts on approaching those two options?
Unfortunately, I do not have time to extend to this evening.
Nor do I.
All right, that's good to know. So in that case, there are a few other items highlighted in green in the working doc paper file, particularly for the secretary role. There were just a couple of time durations about completing documents and about the appointment of co-secretaries. And then also the process of elections. And lastly, the idea of term limits. Term limits and a couple of majority items. So I think perhaps what I'll do is just open the floor to anyone who has any thoughts about modifying anything within the working doc as it's proposed. And if there aren't any, I will understand that to mean that everyone's had the chance to review them all and agrees with all of the language that's been chosen for the bylaws.
Well, you can consider me not knowing anything because I still can't figure box out.
Would it be helpful if I emailed you a copy of the file? To Paul, that is.
Yes, I can do the email.
All right.
That way I can read it then.
All right, I will make a note on that. Paul, were you able to use the chat function in Zoom? Because there's a link directly to that file in the chat, and that should give you access as well.
Well, that'll be my Zoom lesson 102.
All right.
I'm just finally lucky enough to be able to figure out how to get you guys on the screen so I can see you.
Got it. All right, I'll provide you that email. And Tom, you were about to raise your hand as well.
Yeah, I guess if nobody else had anything, if a few comments on a few of your comments in the working doc, we could I'll just whip through those and give you my 2 cents on things. Back up under the membership, you had a question about, does resignation require permission from the board? I am not aware of anything, and I don't know how the board would stop somebody from resigning if they're not, because if they're not going to attend meetings, they're not going to attend meetings. So I don't know that the board has any say in somebody deciding to resign. And then where it was, and then in the working doc, you had section 3, you had a section content not included in the current draft. And you brought up something where there's things in the resolution that established the CAC that differ from the current county code.
Yes.
And I've not researched that, but my immediate guess is because the CAC was established in 1990, county codes changed since then, and we've not and we've not kept up, and that may be something to have Lee Baker look at and review, and we may have to ask the board to adopt another resolution, revising resolution 90.1 to match the county code. But I think you're gonna. Again, I'm not the attorney, and I would want to talk to Lee. But my assumption is that current county code is going to trump that 30-year-old resolution.
Noted. Thank you. All right. Well, in the I'm sorry, Tom, did you have any other comments that you had wanted to address?
That was it right now.
Okay. So I will note to button that up that an email has been sent to Lee Baker of County Council to review this bylaw and provide feedback to make sure that it's all copacetic. And with that, I think if there's anyone willing, we could have a motion to forward the existing bylaws to the board and take a vote on that. And that would conclude what we're able to conduct today. Alternatively, we could lay this on the table and resume it at the subsequent meeting.
I move to forward the existing bylaws to the board, or to, sorry, is that what we're moving?
Yes, I would say forward a draft of the bylaws with the edits discussed during this meeting to the board?
Okay, I move to forward the working document, right? A draft of the bylaws with the changes referenced in it, to forward that to the board. That was not well said.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to forward the draft of the bylaws with today's modifications to the board. But Tom, please.
Just a quick comment or clarification for you guys, and that the motion is just fine. But just so that you're aware that when something goes to the board, because the executive committee sets the agenda for the board meetings, that means it will go to the executive committee, and then they will have to say forward it to the full board. That's just our process. That has nothing to do with your motion. You don't need to change your motion. That's just our process.
Thanks.
Okay, so by forwarding it to the board, we are forwarding it through the executive committee to set on the board's agenda.
Mhm.
All right, very good. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, would the vice chair please make a roll call vote?
Sure. John Arnold,
Yes.
Ryan Conway,
Yes.
Ronnie Cox is yes. Lily Kleinline,
Yes.
Andrew Manley,
Yes.
Paul White,
Abstain.
Joe Winnia.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the majority takes it.
All right, so the motion passes. Thank you very much. That will be the last item of new business that we'll be able to discuss. We have no members of the public present, so there will not be public comment. And I will just remind everyone that our next regular meeting is Thursday, December 16th at 5:15 p.m. either in the Nat U Hill room in the courthouse or virtually if we continue this. And that is it. If there are no objections, this meeting will adjourn. There's an objection. Tom, please.
No, and I know people have under time, just for the good of the order, a little update on virtual meetings and the executive order. The legislature had their organization day for just a standard thing. We didn't do an election this year, but it's a standard thing that they do, but they generally don't come back until January and actually start legislating. But the day before the organization day, the governor spelled out 3 things he wanted to see the legislature do before he would eliminate the emergency or rescind the emergency order related to COVID. And it had to do with allowing vaccinations to children as young as 5 to be done outside of a physician's office. There was continuing some additional, something that had to do with Medicaid that was related to COVID, and I can't remember the third one. We had the association board met yesterday, and our lobbyists said that there is interest from some legislatures to have them reconvene before the end of the year and address those 3 issues. That she thought that even if that happened, nothing would, we would still be under the executive order best case scenario through the end of the year. So even if they decided to come back and try to tackle those 3 laws that he wanted to see enacted to rescind it. So I think it does sound like we'll be under this at least through the end of the year.
Good to know. Thank you for the update. All right. Are there any objections to adjourning? Seeing none, I would like to say thank you all for staying for the extra 4 minutes. I appreciate your time and that we were able to make some progress. And I look forward to seeing you all again at our December meeting. Happy Thanksgiving.